Welcome to Mental Health for Creative Minds, a podcast where we explore the intersection between mental health and the creative industries. I'm your host, Jessica McGann, TV producer and coach to creative professionals, and a passionate advocate for mental health in film and theater communities. In the film and theater industry, there exists a pervasive stigma that in order to succeed, one must be tough or thick-skinned. This narrative pressures many to suffer in silence, fearing that admitting to struggles might signal that they just aren't cut out for the demands of this creative world. It's a culture that often equates vulnerability with weakness, particularly among men, who are traditionally encouraged to suppress their emotions rather than express or address them. This societal expectation can prevent many talented individuals from seeking the help they need, potentially hindering their personal and professional growth. And that is precisely why I have invited Dustin Hogan, a dedicated men's mental health counselor, to join us today. Dustin's expertise in supporting men with their mental health offers crucial insights and strategies for anyone in our industry battling in silence. Here's a little info on Dustin for you. Through personalized one-on-one therapy sessions and online courses, Dustin provides unwavering support to men, helping them cultivate self-awareness and equipping them with effective tools to navigate challenges with anxiety, depression, confidence, self-esteem, and motivation. Dustin is also the founder of Therapy for Dudes, an online brand dedicated to breaking down the stigma around men seeking support for their mental well-being. Having personally faced his own battles with anxiety and depression, Dustin truly understands the importance of men seeking assistance for their mental health. His ultimate mission is to inspire men to embrace vulnerability, proactively seek support, and embark on a transformative journey towards mental wellness. In today's episode, we explore Dustin's multifaceted life, from his initial career in hotel management to becoming a DJ and finally a guiding light for others through counseling. This isn't just a story about career transformations, it's about listening deeply to the stirrings of one's heart and daring to follow them even when led off the beaten path. What you will learn from today's episode is the importance of resilience in transition, insights on how creative pursuits can both challenge and enhance one's mental health, and practical tools for well-being. We're going to break down the stigma around seeking help for mental health and how embracing vulnerability can lead to profound personal growth. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hi, Dustin. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jess. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I am so ecstatic that you are joining me here today because you are a well-educated counselor for men, period, but you're also a creative yourself and you're a DJ and you have a lot of creative endeavors. So I'm excited to hear about your journey and also learn from you and your experience. So thanks for
Yeah.
joining.
Well, thank you for having me. Now, looking forward to diving into this. Was looking forward to it all week, actually.
Oh, good. That makes me so happy. Well, I have a question to start you off with. I would love to explore your career journey a little bit
Mhm.
because I know that you started your career landscaping and then transitioned a little bit into DJing, which is a incredibly cool creative endeavor that I absolutely know nothing about. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about where this idea came from, your passion about it, and how you found your way to it.
Sure. Yeah, and it's interesting to even go a little bit further back than the landscaping piece. So I started in the hotel business actually, because that's what I originally went to school for. Yeah, I went to school for hotel restaurant management, and got a practicum at the Marriott here in Calgary, and absolutely loved it. Loved connecting with guests and having an absolute blast. Driving cars and chatting people up, and came to realize that as much fun as I was having, I wasn't necessarily passionate about that. And right around that time, this is back in 2004, a friend of our family recommended Rich Dad, Poor Dad to me, reading that book.
I've heard
Yeah.
that book recommended so many times. Okay, I'm adding it to my reading list right now. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. And so I read that book and it really inspired me from an entrepreneurial standpoint of maybe wanting to do my own thing. And originally when I went to school for hotel management, restaurant management, I thought, oh, maybe I'll run my own restaurant or something at some point. So I already had a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, but after reading that book, it really, really inspired me. And at the time working at the Marriott on the weekends, I was cutting grass in the neighborhood, just neighbors, and I had like one client and then two and then five. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, man, there's A, some good cash in this, and B, I had that freedom to, find my own clients and be able to connect with people in a different way. So took the leap, stopped working at the Marriott, started my own business, the grass guy, I was called at the time. It was an
You're
interesting.
lucky weed wasn't legal just yet. Otherwise, you'd be
Well,
very, that
I've
would be
got
bad
some
branding.
stories of people calling the number on the back of my truck and like, "Hey man, you got the hookup?" Oh yeah, yeah. It was some interesting stories there with a name like the grass guy. And
That's a lesson in
so
branding and marketing right there.
well, exactly. Yeah. And so transitioned out of the hotel business, started running this landscaping business and built it up to be a pretty decent business.
How
It
old are you
was,
around this time?
yeah, I was like 21, 22, 23. Yeah.
Yeah, young.
So fairly young for sure. And, kind of doing my thing, working really hard for 6, 7 months of the year. Gave me some time in the winters. I did a little bit of snow removal, but certainly not as much as I was doing on the landscaping side. I was mowing almost 100 yards a week on my own. So it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. And so interesting thing at that time. So I was landscaping was now the full-time thing, but my side hustle on the weekends was I started to get into DJing. I was really into electronic music at the time. I remember buying a set of turntables from eBay and setting them up in my parents' basement, and no intention of playing in clubs or anything like that, but just started having fun. My parents were super supportive. They loved when I was rocking the beats down there. And the kind of turning point was there was a contest here in the city to open up for a pretty big name DJ, a guy named Armin van Buren. I'm sure many people know who he is. And although I didn't win the contest, I ended up placing second. And
You
the
played
best,
second? You
yeah,
played
yeah, like this is
second.
from my parents' basement to like this DJ contest and placing second. Oh yeah, it was.
Dustin, that's massive. Were you like severely impressed by yourself? Like, were you surprised?
Uh, no, I was terrified beyond belief. Like I couldn't sleep the night before. I was ready to puke before. My hands were shaking, and it was just anxiety through the roof. But it pushed me out of my comfort zone. All my friends were there, my family was there, my parents, and then they called out my name for second place. And there was some disappointment, but excitement as well. Like, man, wow, I didn't imagine that would happen. But that ended up connecting me to a really talented DJ in the city who ended up becoming actually one of my first mentors. And he took me under his wing and showed me, the ropes of the business and how to work a crowd and really read a room. And so going back to the landscaping piece, right? I'm doing that full time, but now I'm starting to DJ on the side and really loving it and connecting to my passion. And I remember there was a day when I was actually on my way to a meeting to grow the landscaping business, and I actually had to pull over because I was in tears, realizing that here I am on my way to a meeting to grow this business that's doing well, but realizing that there wasn't passion there for the actual business. I had passion for the entrepreneurship side of things, but the actual business of landscaping, I wasn't passionate about, and realized, man, if I were to put the same amount of effort into this passion of DJing that I'm putting into this landscaping business, what could be the possibilities coming out of that? And so at that time, I kind of made an internal decision to say, I think I'm going to transition out of this landscaping business and I'm really going to give this music thing a go. And that's what, I sold that business, sold my house here in Calgary, moved to Vancouver to go to music production and audio engineering school. And that was really one of the biggest leaps of faith that I've ever taken. And I mean, that's led to some of the things that I'm doing now, which I imagine we'll talk about in a little bit. But that was kind of that transition from the grass guy to DJing, and my stage name was D Fresh, which all my old school buddies still call me from time to time.
I was gonna ask you if you had a DJ name, but I also was like, Dustin Hogan is a pretty cool name too, but that is just perfection. And
Yeah,
that moment in the car that you're talking about just sounds so incredibly pivotal. Like
it was.
you really felt those emotions and you listened to them, and you could have stayed in fear and been like, no, that's a dream. That's never gonna happen. This is making me money. I'm just gonna stay safe. I'm gonna stay here. But you leaned into what you really truly wanted. Was there any kind of like mental, emotional, or like even social, like from your parents, of people being like, don't do this. This is crazy. No one makes money as an artist. Like people love to tell creatives to like get rid of their dreams and focus on something more practical. Did you face any of that in your transition?
Completely. Yeah. Because at that point, I was now five plus years into the landscaping business, doing quite well. Now I'm kind of mid to late 20s. And all of a sudden I'm thinking about hitting the reset button where all of my friends are now, they're now graduated, they've started their career, they're starting to work their way up. And here I am, 27, 28, thinking about hitting the reset button and absolutely terrified about it. And, of course, there was support from my parents, my sister, my friends, but there was also caution, as well. And it wasn't like I'd had that day and then made that decision. And then all of a sudden it was just, I'm starting school. Like it was a 1.5 year process to get my business sold, get my house sold, find a school, visit Vancouver, choose all these things. So there were, 18 plus months of, is this the right decision? Is this not the right decision? I'm basically going back to the starting line again. So there was absolute fear, and I was terrified. And at the same time, I knew that I needed to do it. I didn't want to look back 20 years, 30 years and say shoulda, coulda, woulda. I really wanted to take that leap, and it was terrifying.
Any regrets?
God, no. Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, it
Amazing.
was not easy. There was, from that point to where I'm at now, like there were some dark times and some low times of things not working out and other major transitions and those types of things. But looking back, it was exactly what I needed to do to get to the point that I'm at right now.
How was your education through the schooling for music? Did you find you had really supportive cohorts and teachers, or did you have any of those kinds of teachers that are like, you're not cut out for this, or like, look around and the person to your left and to your right will probably not be here, like the dramatic arts kind of teacher stereotype? Did you encounter any of that?
No, I mean, I was lucky. It was a really small college that I went to in Vancouver. And funny enough, when I signed up, one of the things I'm like, oh, I'm going to meet all these people. I'm going to have a great cohort, this, that, and the other. And the first day of school, I arrive, and the owner of the school and the head instructor said, unfortunately, we've had one of our lowest registrations ever. You're the only student that signed up. The only student. And I mean, I have moved mountains to get here and completely uprooted my life. And there were other students that were, cohorts ahead of me. So thankfully I connected with them. But for this entire, I think it was an 18-month or 2 year program, I was the only student going through this. So it was like a one-on-one private education. And it was not what I anticipated. Let's just say that, not what I had signed up for.
That is comical. That is
Yeah.
hilarious. And that's a great perspective. Like you got private education for the price of being in a big classroom,
Yes.
but you did it by yourself. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
What a wild time. And um, so I know you because you were one of the teachers at Rhodes Wellness College when I was a student. You
Hmm.
were never my teacher, but I had heard nothing but wonderful things about you from the other students.
Thanks, Jess.
I'm curious, how did DJing and counseling then become intertwined?
Yeah, and that's the $1 million question, because it's about a decades long process of struggle and success and setbacks and comebacks. So
Did
yeah.
you attempt to make a full-time living as a DJ before you went back to school for counseling?
Yeah, so that's another awesome question, and it kind of fits into everything. So I'd moved to Vancouver in 2011 and then graduated in 2013. And throughout those 2 years, I was doing, DJing events and smaller stuff like that, but wasn't really building that much momentum because I'd moved there because of DJing, but the schooling was really in music production and audio engineering because I wanted to make my own music. That was really the step forward. And I graduated in 2013, and it was like, okay, well, what now? I'm not like signed to a record label. I don't have all of these hits under my belt. And so it was a bit of a wake up call. And I remember I was searching online for some potential opportunities, and I can't remember where I'd found the ad, but it was a school in Vancouver that said, we're looking for somebody to lead our DJ program. And it was a high school of all places. And I'm like, interesting, teaching. I'm kind of doing a little bit of that and presenting at school and enjoying that. Obviously, I love the DJing. So I responded to the ad, and I go in and meet the owners of the school. It's a private school. And the school actually catered to students that tended to struggle in the traditional high school and school streams. So kids maybe dealing with anxiety or on the autism spectrum, or just generally kind of struggling with traditional school. And so there were smaller classes. And because of that, and because of this smaller school environment, they had interesting programs like a DJ program, like an electronic music production program.
I wish my high school
And
had cool stuff like that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Shout out to Brain Boost Education in Vancouver, an incredible organization. And anyway, I go in, I meet one of the students, I meet the owners, and my interview was I had to teach a DJ lesson with a student, this young dude who was just so passionate about music and DJing. And I told him some of the guys that I've gotten to open up for, and he was blown away by that. And we really connected right away. And I mean, it went really well, and it was so much fun. And so they offered me a position. So this was like a few weeks after graduating. So I started teaching DJing there. Yeah, I started to build out their electronic music production program, teaching students how to produce. And it was this step, my first step really into counseling and coaching without realizing that that's what I was doing, because I'm teaching the students about music and DJing and music production, but really it was about life, how to set goals, how to have a vision, how to manage your time, how to build strong habits, all of these pieces that I now focus in on from a coaching and a counseling standpoint. And as I was working there for these, I think a couple of years I was there, I was like, man, I really like this teaching and speaking and coaching side of things. Maybe this is actually the next transition point. So it was the teaching of music and DJing then led to me starting a speaking business and a coaching business in 2015 or so, building that up, having that absolutely implode, to then speaking on behalf of another organization, getting the opportunity to transition or to travel throughout Western Canada, delivering close to 300 presentations to almost 40,000 students. And it was incredible. And then that led me to then going back to school for the counseling piece. And there's some other pieces in there I can fill in if you've got some interest, but that was kind of the steps that led to what I'm doing now, which at the time made absolutely no sense. But one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs is we don't connect the dots looking forward, we connect the dots looking backwards. And where I'm at now, all of these things, from hotels to landscaping to DJing to teaching to speaking to now counseling, it all makes sense, but only looking in reverse.
It really sounds like you live in a state of flow. And I know you've encountered roadblocks and hardships in your life, but what I'm really hearing from your story is that you never were really rigid in your plans or your visions for your future. You really listened to yourself and allowed yourself to evolve as a creative, as a professional, as a human being, taking from what you learned and evolving forward. And that's just like incredible. Also, the fact that you got a DJing, like a professional DJing job almost
Yeah.
immediately after graduating is like so incredible. That's impressive. I hope you were just like over the moon at the time when that happened.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so many of those students that I work with, I'm still connected to and friends with today, seeing
Oh,
them
wow.
succeed and, build their life into something cool. So it was, yeah, an amazing opportunity.
I also really connect to the part where you put the pieces together, that there was so much more to the art than just like the music portion of it. And it has so much to do with the artist and how they see themselves as artists and how they see themselves contributing as artists. And it reminds me, when I was in theater school, I did a professional acting program, and the teacher, I remember on the first day of acting, he said to us that he was teaching us to become professional human beings. And
Mm,
I didn't understand it at the time. And it wasn't until I went through the life coaching program that I
mm,
realized that so much of the work that I did as an actor, connecting to my feelings, grounding myself in my body, exploring feelings, is all so aligned
yeah.
with what you do in a therapeutic, healing, coaching type of space as well. Like they really do connect
Yeah.
perfectly. Like,
Yeah, and as you're saying that, it's making me think back to when I was in school for music production, and the owner of the school, we built a really strong relationship because I was the only student. So we built a really strong relationship. And I remember one day he said to me, he said, "You want to look at the world through a producer's eyes."
ooh,
And at the time, I thought he was referring to music production because that's the course that
yeah,
I was taking. But really, he was the deeper meaning was look at the world through the eyes of somebody that actually contributes more than consumes, produces more to contribute to the world than consumes from the world. So being a producer, not just from a music standpoint, but from this really deep holistic standpoint. And it's a message that I've taken forward from that moment of, sure, I'm not producing music anymore, but I'm producing experiences for my clients. I'm producing content, right, that is going to impact people. And it was such a deep message that I didn't understand at the time, but has paid absolute dividends moving forward from that point in time, because I've really taken it to heart of being a producer more than a consumer.
yeah. That reminds me of the Brene Brown quote, contribute more than you critique. Give more than you
Yes.
criticize. Like you could sit on your couch and criticize. Like, you mean, how often do you go to an art show or like hear someone go to an art show and go, "Oh, I could do that. I could do that.
Hmm.
I could make that song. Oh, that song's trash." Like give more, play more, contribute more than you critique others who are doing that very thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're a professional counselor now. I know that you have your business counseling for dudes. Did I say that right?
Therapy for dudes.
Therapy for dudes,
Yeah.
where you specialize in working with dudes in a mental health space. Do you still balance your DJing career with your counseling career?
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, I mean, I still go to shows. I still, I've got my finger in some gigs that I help manage and that type of thing. The last big gig that I played was, probably a few years back. Last year though, on New Year's Eve, my sister actually got married, and not this past December, but previously. And Some of her friends are like, T, you got to get up there. You got to get up there. So I played some tracks, and it was absolutely amazing to get back behind the decks for even just a little bit, and feel that passion and that connection, because that, to me, that is the golden thread through everything that I've shared here, from working in hotels to DJing to working with students, is that connection to other people. And to me, that's the real passion that I have in all of these pieces, and especially now in the counseling piece, being able to connect with guys every single day in a one-on-one capacity, in live workshops that I do. So that connection piece is so huge. So yeah, no DJ gigs on the schedule coming up, but you know what? It'll happen again at some point.
Do you still have your decks? Like, do you ever just do it for fun at
Oh
home?
yeah. Like I've pulled them out a couple times for some of my class or my students at Rhodes, and got to rock a couple gigs there. Yeah. So
I'm sad I missed it.
yeah, you missed out. It was a
Left
sold
too
out
soon.
show, all 20 people. So yeah, it was great.
I think that's beautiful too. Like, you still get to be a DJ. You don't need to
Hmm.
make money from it in order to classify yourself as an artist or a DJ. Like, it can be something that you just allow yourself to do for fun. That's what acting is for me these days. I do community theaters. I do it for
Hmm.
fun because it sparks something inside me. It fuels something inside of me. You don't need to necessarily make money to be good at it or to be worthy of it or to classify yourself as that type of artist. So thank you for
Totally.
sharing that.
Yeah.
I feel like the arts community is filled with males who perhaps are maybe a little bit more resistant for seeking help because there is a little bit of a stigma or narrative
Hmm.
around that. Do you find that you have those kinds of conversations a lot, or do your clients typically come to you ready to really explore?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I mean, it's a bit of both. It's definitely not one way or the other. And, even if I just think about myself as somebody that, has sat in the client's seat working with numerous, counselors and therapists over the years, like, that stigma was there for me, for the longest time. I've dealt with, severe anxiety, very, dark depression over the years. And at the same time, still kind of soldiered through it, because I felt like I needed to show up as, this confident, charismatic guy that had it all together, when many days I was crumbling on the inside. And although I had and have incredible support from friends and family, my parents, sister, so many people that are cheering me on, there are many days where, I really felt like I was going at it alone, because that stigma, as men seeking support for mental health, somehow that makes us weaker or less than a man. I mean, I was that statistic for the longest time, until life pushed me to the brink, that it kind of forced me to reach out. And even initially, when I'd reached out to counselors, I wasn't telling anybody about it. I was just kind of going about it on my own. And so now, transitioning to being in the other seat, in the counselor's seat, so many of the dudes that reach out to me, maybe this is the first time that they've ever reached out to somebody, or, they're reaching out, but similar to what I was doing, they're not telling anybody that they're reaching out to somebody. And, being in Alberta as well, kind of like an oil driven province. So, working with a lot of guys that are on the rigs, where that stigma is even stronger. And, kudos for them for taking that step and reaching out. So often, just booking that initial discovery call can be the most challenging piece for some of the guys that I work with. And many of them will say, man, I've been thinking about reaching out to you for months. I've been on your website for months thinking about, should I call, should I reach out, should I book? And, finally they do, and are happy that they have. But it's a tough decision. And so fighting that stigma can be really difficult, especially if they don't have the support of friends or family or their partner or whomever. That makes it even more challenging. But thankfully, so many guys do reach out.
what led you to seek help for the first time? What was that thing, that final straw that led you to go, I can't do this on my own anymore. I do need something more.
Yeah. So this is probably over 20 years ago is when I first reached out. And at that point, anxiety really ruled my life, feeling very uncomfortable in my own skin, a lot of worry, a lot of ruminating thoughts, discomfort socially, and yet still showing up confident and charismatic, yet internally dealing with a lot. And finally, it got to the point where I didn't even know what it was. I remember I was up at 1, 2 in the morning in a vicious cycle of worry and panic. And I remember seeing an infomercial that was talking about anxiety. And I'm like, anxiety? I thought that was you're excited about something, but then, she's describing all of these symptoms. And I'm like, man, that sounds like what I'm dealing with. And, it's not like there was as much content available online to be able to search these things. How do I even find a counselor? How do I even find a therapist to work with? And luckily, I got connected with a woman here in Calgary who was very supportive at the time. And that was the first step. But I remember just the shame and the embarrassment even going to those sessions is, am I going to see somebody I know? Are they going to ask me where I'm going and what I'm doing? And quite frankly, I felt that for a decade at least after. I mean, now I'm comfortable sharing it, but that's only been in the last 5 to 7 years that I've really been comfortable and extremely comfortable only in maybe the last 3 to 5 years of sharing that. So yeah, the stigma is real for sure.
I feel so lucky because like I grew up with a social worker father. So like I never knew there was a stigma like for so long, and I didn't understand it, but I can understand why opening yourself up, like these are very vulnerable shares that happen in those spaces. So kudos for you for going and advocating for yourself and figuring it out. Anxiety alone is just like so painful. I remember too feeling it for the first time and having no words to describe what I
Yeah.
was feeling. I had no understanding of it. It was so painful. And I think it took me a long time to find the word anxiety to tie to it.
Yeah.
From your skills as a counselor, because you're a very fantastic counselor and coach, and knowing your experience as a creative, is there a skill or a message or a lesson that you learned along the way or know now that was especially helpful as you navigated life as an entrepreneur and a creative that you might be willing to share or teach to me and our listeners?
Sure. And most definitely. So there's two words that come to mind for me, and I've got them written on sticky notes, and I might as well get them tattooed across my forehead at this point. But consistency and discipline. And to me, especially when it comes to discipline, to me, discipline is doing what I need to do, even when I don't feel like doing what I need to do. And to me, it's from an exercise standpoint, it's from a meditation standpoint, it's from self-care. There are days where, if I'm having a low day, perhaps I'm in a period of depressed mood. And the last thing that I want to do is go to the gym, for example. Those are the days where I've really got to push myself. And it's not push myself to have the greatest workout ever, but it's to be disciplined, to do what I need to do, even when I don't feel like doing it. Because I know coming out the other end, I'm going to feel better mentally, emotionally, physically. And when it comes to, let's even just start on the DJ side of things, having to, in the early days, go out and knock on doors and see if there was possibilities for gigs. It's not like I was excited to go and do that stuff all of the time, but I knew that I needed to do it, even if I didn't feel like it, because it was going to allow me to have the results that I wanted to fulfill that vision. And from an entrepreneurial standpoint, as much as I love the work that I'm doing, there are days where I don't feel like doing my bookkeeping. There are days where I don't feel like, doing the follow-ups to, for new clients and those types of things. But it's in those moments where discipline To me, discipline builds momentum. It leads to motivation, and discipline in combination with being consistently disciplined. To me, those are the two aspects that really have moved my life forward in so many ways, from a creative standpoint, musically, from a DJing perspective, as an entrepreneur. But most importantly, the umbrella that's around all of this is from a mental health standpoint. I've got to be consistent with these activities. I've got to be disciplined on those days when I don't feel like putting in effort, because I know that that's going to improve my life overall. So sometimes it's easier said than done. This morning is a great example. I wanted to get a workout in before our interview, and I was up late last night till close to midnight. My alarm went off at 5:30 this morning. The last thing that I wanted to do was get out of bed and go to the gym. But I knew that if I just got my feet out of bed, that would start building the momentum, and sure enough, feeling great now, and so grateful that I actually had the discipline this morning to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel that even in my own progression as an entrepreneur and as an artist, the dedication, the mindset of just like believing that it's possible and just continuing to show up, even when the viewers aren't watching, the people aren't paying.
Yeah.
That is the hardest time, when no one else is cheering you on, when it is just you driving the car, seeing the vision, believing in it. It's that consistency and that determination that can just really get you to that finish line and to stay,
Yeah.
keep that faith in yourself.
Totally. And funny enough, from a music standpoint, so one of the last songs that I produced a few years back, which was a collaboration with a good buddy of mine in Vancouver, is a song called The Disciplined Dreamer. And it's this kind of epic, inspirational slash, kind of progressive house song where I'm doing a speech over top of it, talking about the importance of discipline. So I'll send that over to you, and maybe we can link it in the show notes or something like that.
Absolutely. Maybe I can close off the internet interview with your
Sure.
song playing on.
Cool.
It'd be so cool. That's amazing. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or explored with you that you want to ensure that you have an opportunity to share with the listeners today?
Kind of the last piece of the puzzle is just, especially from a creative standpoint, it's all about that perseverance through those times when things aren't going according to plan. Because from 2011, when I went to school, up until 2021, where I launched my counseling practice, there were highs and lows unlike anything I'd ever experienced. So it's kind of that 10 years to an overnight success. And not saying that I'm a success at this point. I still have a lot that I want to accomplish, but it's taken just that relentless pursuit of the vision and trusting in myself, trusting in the process, and really relying on other people to carry me at times as well, when I couldn't carry myself. Because so often I would default to the lone wolf, or no, I've got it, I'll figure it out on my own. Sometimes we need that support from friends, from family, from my cohort, and people that are willing to believe in me at times when I didn't even believe in myself, where I lost that belief, I should say. It has been a key lesson for me, especially in the last couple of years here. So yeah, if anything, is just continue to persevere and lean on others when they're willing to give support.
And I would argue with you, Dustin, that you are successful right now. You are very successful, and there is
Thank you.
more success to come for you, but you get to be successful right now. You are,
Thank
and
you.
more success is coming your way for sure.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
Dustin, if there's any listeners right now who are interested in getting counseling from you or coaching from you, maybe it's their first time, maybe they're nervous. What is the best way for people to reach out, learn more about you, your work, and to connect with you?
For sure. So easiest way is just through my personal website, dustinhogan.com. Learn a little bit more about the work that I'm doing, potentially book a discovery call, see what's going on in my world from a counseling perspective. And obviously on Instagram as well, at I am Dustin Hogan. That's a great way to follow along as well. And then for my new brand, Therapy for Dudes, visit therapyfordudes.com. so many exciting things coming up with that, from the counseling side of things, coaching, online courses, free content, paid content, you name it, it's all going to be there. So really, really excited about that as well.
Well, I'll make sure all of those links are in the episode description below. And to all the listeners, I cannot recommend Dustin enough. You're like one of the top people that I refer my clients to when they're not a match for coaching. And I just think the world of you. And for all the creatives, I think it's really beneficial to seek counseling from someone who understands that creative journey. So I really hope that some people contact you from this. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your journey with me on today's podcast.
Thank you, Jess. This was an absolute blast and a pleasure, and I imagine will not be the last time. So super excited.
Now time for the legal stuff. This podcast is presented to you solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I may be a professionally certified coach myself, but hosting a podcast is not coaching. This podcast should not be used in substitution of working with a licensed therapist, doctor, coach, or other qualified professionals. Copy that? Amazing. See you on the next episode. Nothing but love, Jess.